Hey everybody, welcome back to another video where we're trying to find new strategies to find the top markets to invest in. I'm Kenny with STR Insights. I'm the founder. I've got a special guest with us today that's going to help us look from a different approach. So the last couple of weeks we've been talking, we've talked with the CPA and we talked about finding through tax strategies. We've also talked with someone who does BRRRR, so buy, I always mess this up, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, STRs. Now I wanted to approach it from a different strategy because each strategy is unique per each individual. And it's really important that we identify and connect with the right strategy and approach that when we're finding the right markets to invest in. So this strategy is more geared towards marketing and finding the right properties in the right markets that we can market and find opportunities with. So I reached out to Bill Faeth, who is like the guru or the GOAT of STR marketing. Many of you know him for that and have heard his content. It's very educational and helpful. But what I want to do with Bill this time, which a lot of you know, I do a podcast with Bill on STRonomics. But this is going to be a little different, where we're talking about finding markets based on marketing strategies. So whether that's with certain amenities or just opportunities in that market, because every market is unique. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to bring in Bill right now. And let me flip this here. There we go. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Kenny.
Great. Well, Bill,
because you did the intro. You did the intro, so this is kind of weird. It's like backwards.
I know, yeah, I did do the intro, yeah. So for those of you who are like, what is he talking about? So we do our podcast, STRonomics, where we talk about STRs on a higher level in terms of the market data. And Bill usually does the intro because I'm always like, I don't know, I'm always going to mess it up. But in these videos, I do the intros. But so Bill, let's start at a high level here. And when you're finding so I want to back up. So I want to share experience first, everybody. And then I want to ask a question. So in February and March of this year, you gave me a call because you had funds in a 1031 exchange. So basically you were wanting to, had you already sold a property and you had these funds or something?
I sold 2 properties. I had $537,000 in funds because I thought I'd found my dream property right here and it fell through. So I gave Kenny a call. This is before STR Insights was public. I mean, I had access to spreadsheets at the time, but I called Kenny and wanted to get some information on a new market.
Right. And so he called me and what was the criteria you were looking for? And then why were you looking for that criteria?
I mean, number one, I always look to find a hole in a market if it's accessible. And that's a really challenging task. Not to turn this into an infomercial for you, but prior to your software being released, it was always challenging because the way that we evaluate markets and discover new markets is just backwards in the way that the subscriptions are set up in the other platforms, right? So, I mean, I had an idea, but there was a market and it might be a little, I think the story might have transcended a little bit differently than what you're leading down to. If I remember correctly, you and Emil actually had done some research into the market I think you're about to talk about. And then there was a mention in our mastermind group and I reached out to you to kind of get more information because without having an address, or really knowing much about the market, and I think we're talking about Banner Elk in Western North Carolina, it was way too challenging. And I'd seen your spreadsheets going back, this was in February, all the way back to September. And I knew that you would have some data that I would be looking for. So I think that's when I reached out to you.
Gotcha. Okay. So what made you, so when I shared the data with you on Banner Elk and, I said some people in the mastermind had mentioned it. So it was now on your radar, but what really sold you on Banner Elk? So
yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. Number one, you know me well enough, and I know we're talking about marketing today. I need an anchor to be able to hang my hat on from a marketing perspective. I'm a marketing guy. I mean, the success that I've had in my adult life has all been about marketing and sales. And I've taken that from my startups, from my, brick and mortar e-com businesses, and placed it into, short-term rentals. So I confirmed the data with Tyler Kuhn, right? Who is, probably the biggest STR centric, real estate agent in that market. And within 48 hours of talking to you, seeing the data, I'm in my truck driving to Western North Carolina. I saw 4 properties. And for me, why that market? And a lot of people would say, Bill, you're in Nashville. You drive right by Gatlinburg. You drive right by the Smokies. Why not there? Because I use the word overdeveloped with the Smokies, right? And you'll never hear me steer away from a place that's saturated. I love how many STRs are there. They're only there because one reason, because you can make money and because of Dollywood and all the attractions that are there. But the investment is significantly higher. So I look at places first and foremost that I can enter the market more cost efficiently and basically force appreciation through the amenities and the upgrades and things that I'm going to do, but also looking at the scale of hosting, right? Even though I consider myself a top 1% host with all the stuff that I do, I out amenity my competitors. I do personalized videos in my sales process to my customers. I do Facebook ads, direct marketing, sales pages, all this type of stuff to increase my ADR. It's harder in a place like Gatlinburg or the Smokies because everybody's got the indoor mod pool. They've got the hot tubs. They've got everything. They've spent $50,000, $75,000 on a game room, right? So how do I differentiate myself? Because that's really what marketing is. So if somebody's running an ad, and they're trying to sell on price, then I'm going to run an ad and I'm going to make it bigger and nicer, and I'm going to sell on value, right? So that's why I wanted to go into the market. One, you identified that there was a hole in the market for me before I even went there. 2, I found a kick-ass property that is so unique. I mean, it's a 6-bedroom, 4-bath, 2 acres, long-range views, like a $300,000 stone fire pit with a 50-foot stair walkway down there. It had a 3-car garage with, a two with en suites and a full kitchen and laundry and a family room. Another 2-car garage down underneath the 3-car garage that I turned into a massive game room. It had everything that checks every box for me, right? So then I can out amenity. I can outview everybody in Seven Devils. I can outview almost everybody in Beach Mountain, right? So I look at all of those things that go into it. And now, okay, I've got views to market. I've got a kick-ass house that's huge, that's new, that's cool. I can build a game room for about 20 grand versus 50 to 70,000. I've got the most beautiful fire pit I've ever seen at an STR, right? I have all of these things that I can go in and I can layer, and that layering is what's critical. A lot of people see one thing and then they say, okay, I'm good. Well, every single thing that I do, whether I'm looking at a new market, whether I'm looking at, a new property, is how do I layer the value? How do I layer multiple forms of marketing? And at the end of the day, Kenny, the location, not just that it's at the top of a mountain, I've got long range views, it is right smack in between Sugar Mountain and Beach Mountain. So I have access now, the proximity to 2 ski resorts, right? Not just one. So like I bought a smaller property on Beach Mountain. Nobody's going to stay there and drive to Sugar Mountain. Nobody's going to stay on the southeast side of Banner Elk closer to Sugar Mountain and drive to Beach, unless it's like a holiday weekend and they booked, last minute. So I love the proximity from 2 different ways. I have so many ways to market that property. That's really the biggest reason. So the gap in the market that you helped me identify, and that the number of marketing opportunities. So that way I'm not just holding my hat with one type of ad.
Right. I do want to clarify on one thing. So you keep talking about the hole in the market or the gap in the market. Can you elaborate on what that was? Just so people understand, what that really means.
So at the time, like late February of this year, 2022, there was less than a handful of properties that could, accommodate 16 guests or more in Banner Elk. I've kind of ruined that after making it public that I invested into a big property there. And it's probably tripled or quadrupled at this point. But still, there's only a couple in Banner Elk. They've had to go out farther to like Seven Devils and Blowing Rock and that type of stuff, which are not as desirable. So the hole in the market means that it's underserved, either from, could be location, could be, in this case, it was about occupancy, capacity within the house. And so the first house I saw when I went there, Kenny, it actually could sleep 18. I've got mine toned down to 16. I could put 20 if I wanted to, but I'm not an occupancy seller by any means. I just don't like all the damage and the wear and tear. The first house I saw was bigger, and it had online, it looked like it had a great game room, right? And you remember it was the one that was doing like 250. I think I sent you the data because I had the data actually in their listing, but it was closer to Seven Devils. And what actually was in Seven Devils, it had no views, and it was run down. It was tired, right? Like everything in the game room, all the games were chipped, and the carpet needed to be complete. It was old. It was something that I probably would have gutted and started over, right? So I factor all those things. To me, I can market that, but the experience when somebody arrives, that's the double-edged sword. When you can market like I can market a cruddy property. But what's going to happen if I do a great job of marketing and I get maximum ADR and then I've got a cruddy property? The guest is not going to have a great experience, and they're going to let me know in the reviews, right? So I've got to make sure that the property is up to the level of how I want to position and market that property. So for I shouldn't say many years, but my new beach house in Gulf Shores is kind of like what everybody has labeled me as. I'm the Gulf Shores guy, and look at this nice beach house. So this one's my favorite property. This one I believe is the nicest. It has the most to be able to offer, right? So I think the second part of this is once you identify that gap, and if you do have the ability to market the way that I do, the house and the hospitality and the amenities still have to live up to that expectation. And I think that's a huge problem that I see industry-wide, is that people do what I call ET syndrome. They oversell their property, and then that's when they get dinged on value at the reviews at checkout.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that makes sense. So I want to take a couple steps back first and really emphasize your finding method. So I know you're looking at some new markets for potential new investments, but from a marketing standpoint, what are things like, how do you apply those principles when you're finding a new market? So obviously the numbers have to be there, but like what are things that stand out to you that go, hey, yeah, I can market this market for these certain people?
So I'll give you an example. Hot Springs, Arkansas. I've talked about it publicly. Under contract on an apartment complex there that will turn into a hotel. I'm not worried about talking to it next. It's too late for somebody to get into that market. You know, the permits shut down on November 1st. So I talk a lot about the traffic sources, right? So there's, National Park, there's bathhouses, there's a lake, and there's a horse track. So there's 4 significant traffic sources coming into Hot Springs, Arkansas. That's great. That's literally means I could turn on Airbnb, buy the property, turn on the listing, Airbnb, Vrbo, and the apartment complex hotel. We'll probably do Expedia and Booking.com, which I typically just do Airbnb and Vrbo for single family homes, and just let it go. And it'd probably be okay. But now I have more opportunities to target market. I want to say that one more time, to target market. It doesn't do you any good to take a picture of your house and put it on Facebook and click boost and just send it to the entire country, right? Or even to the top markets that are where people live, guests live, that are coming to visit you. You've got to be very targeted in the content that you're creating, right? So when there's going to be people that are going to come just to go and stay, that maybe live in Little Rock or Conway, Arkansas, or Memphis or Mississippi, to come and hike, in that park and stay close, because it's like literally a mile away from downtown, right? So that proximity is huge. So I can target hikers, I can target gamblers, I can target people that are coming to boat, to fish, to do all these things, all the activities at the lake. I can target people that are coming for the bathhouses. It gives me more opportunity to market. And this is the fundamental problem that people go wrong, not just in our industry, but in general. When they're marketing, they think they're selling their property. They're not. You're selling the experience that the person's going to have when they come to your location, right? The property is a percentage of that, and typically a smaller percentage. So I'm looking at selling why they're coming. And now, as opposed to, if I'm at a lake and I'm dressed in my fishing gear, because as soon as we're done, I'm heading down to my lake for fall break. People are going there to either boat, drink, ski, whatever, but it's all around the water, right? There is no bathhouses. There is no casino. There's nothing there. That's why I literally was down there yesterday filming content for Facebook ads, for TikTok, for Instagram with my guy Chris, because it needs more marketing because it's so slow there. Hot Springs, Arkansas, John, he was down there last week. He goes there every week, and the thing is just humming with people, and it's because of those 4 traffic sources. So that gives me more opportunity. Once again, I use that term layering, like at the properties. How many opportunities do I have to market? And just having a hot tub is not enough, folks, because everybody has a hot tub. If a hot tub is mandatory in a mountain market, hot tub's mandatory pretty much everywhere except for the beach, and it even moves the needle at the beach, right, Kenny? So I can't just hang my hat and say, hey, look at my chalet, look at my apartment complex, or look at my boutique hotel in Hot Springs. It's got a hot tub. That's not going to be enough, to be able to move the needle. So it becomes really important for people to learn how to position, the marketing of all the attraction drivers, the why, in all caps, WHY, why people are coming to that market. So those markets give me more opportunity, right? It's one of the things about, like, at the Asheville market has always been a strong market, because you got foliage there. You've got Maggie Valley, you've got Hendersonville, you've got Black Mountain, you've got the breweries and all the stuff. So many different walks of life love going to Asheville. I'm probably more of a Biltmore guy, but you know what? I can go into downtown Asheville and, go find these shops, art galleries. I could probably find a place to drink wine, but then you have the beer guzzling brewery people that, have dreadlocks and want to smoke weed. It's for them too. Right. And there's not very many markets that you can see both of those demographics collide and they can both have a good experience. Does that make sense? That's one of the things that I think really stands out about Asheville. And it's why I'm really close on 2 properties around Asheville right now.
And what are their addresses?
123 Sesame Street and 123 Main Street.
Yeah, there you go. No, I think that's really interesting, and I think very important, especially in the uncertainty of today's economy, making sure that you're investing in markets that have a true traffic driver. So one of the reason why I love STR Insights is because you have the ability to sort by destination type. And also you can sort not only by destination type, so like we're talking beach, mountain, lake, ski, river, national park, college, so on, but isolate market size as well, because that's just as important. When I say market size, the number of active listings in that market. I've talked to a lot of investors recently who are targeting smaller markets, and that worries me a little bit because the traffic drivers aren't truly there. So I'm not saying they're bad markets to invest in, but there's just a higher risk. So I guess, Bill, from a perspective of words of wisdom, I'm not saying discourage anyone from investing in those markets, but if someone was looking, they're dead set on investing in a smaller market that might not have as many traffic drivers as a traditional vacation rental markets do, how do you find the right ones that you feel like with a marketing lens, if that makes any sense?
So, I mean, I probably similar to yourself, Kenny, I probably have that discussion with people that are looking for their first market or second STR, or whatever it is. And just ask them, how are you going to market this? It's really simple. And I'm going to put it on Airbnb, and I'm going to put it on VRBO, and I'm going to add a fire pit, and I'm going to add a hot tub. That's like the default answer. Okay, well, that's great, but how are you going to market this? Because that's not marketing, right? So for me, everything kind of goes back to the ability to be able to market. It's like I remember the first report that I saw out of STR Insights in Gatlinburg at our mastermind meeting, right? And I think that's the one that had Logan, Ohio, is the #1 market in the country at that time. And there's like a sod farm and an entrance to a state park, right? And I think then there might have been like 8 or 9 or 10 STRs that could crush it when we're on lockdown, during COVID, but that's not going to be a long-term sustainable market because nobody's going to, take a tour of, Old Yeller sod farm, by any means. So I stay steadfast to the traffic drivers. I mean, and I'll go back to where I live. I live just south of Nashville, Tennessee. The traffic drivers into Nashville are insane, right? There's a reason that like 21 million tourists a year come to this market. There's whiskey, there's breweries, there's sports, there's arts, there's music once in a while. I mean, that's the number one thing, right?
Yeah.
The number one, there's a reason it's the number one destination for bachelorette parties in the country, bigger than Las Vegas. So that's why this market blew up so quickly. That's like now it's either zone commercial or owner occupied. It's the only way you can get it. There's another way. I think we talked about that in the STRnomics podcast, right? Transfer of LLC. But I think a lot of people are making poor decisions right now because they look at the barrier to entry. They can buy a 4-bedroom property for $450,000, and then they look at the trailing 12 months, which we're going to have to get to next summer, probably to this time next year, to have a real representation of a T12, the trailing 12 months of rents. They don't understand that they're buying based off of trailing data in a lot of these data platforms, and they're making bad investments because those traffic sources that drove traffic during COVID have dried up, and they're not going to be the same, right? I don't see Smith Lake, where I'm invested, ever coming close to doing what it's done. I mean, I think it's a weekend market now. It'll have a great summer, and I'll be able to probably do 85% occupancy during the summer. But now until like May, I mean, I'll be lucky to be able to do 50% occupancy. If it was not a lifestyle property for me and my family, I would probably consider offloading it and pulling my cash out and reinvesting. If it was strictly a financially driven decision, but it's not. And that's why it's so important to identify why we're investing first before we even look at the first market. Once again, I will say the one thing that I can sustain at Smith Lake is I have something that's marketable that only one other lake has in the South. It's the second clearest lake in the South. And that's like a legit thing, right? So that resonates with mom who's been to a gunky, dirty lake and doesn't want her kids swimming in that, right? But the flip side of that, if they're a fisherman, the gunky, dirty lakes, it's easier to fish. So my point is that there's things to be able to sell on. So I'll just use my lake house. This is my second one I've had on this lake. The first one, I was at the very top of the lake, almost in a wide river. And essentially it was like 150 yards across. I didn't have long range views. It was too challenging to be able to get to. And I did great at the beginning of COVID with this, but I sold it at the peak, bought one, moved down to the middle part. I'm in the heart with the absolute best views on the lake. So I bought the best views, and I bought an older home that had great bones and had to completely renovate it, right? So I basically created my own value. I bought views, bought location, but then had to come in and renovate. And there was no fire pit. There was no hot tub. It was Golden Girls, as Celia refers to it. So, but once again, I was looking at how am I going to market? So one of the huge things was I moved 20 minutes closer to the freeway. So I know that my demographic is coming, most of it, probably 60% is driving up from Birmingham or down from Nashville, Tennessee. So when I deploy Facebook ads, like specifically into Nashville and the surrounding area, and I tell number one, hands down the best freaking views on the lake. Number two, mom, don't worry about your kids because we got arcade games, we got everything, right? I won't go through the whole spiel here. And dad, we're literally only 20 minutes off of I-65. That's a huge thing for people that know that lake, because a lot of places it's 45 minutes, an hour, and you get off of I-65, there's no grocery stores, there's no fast food. It's a dry county, or the lake is dry, right? So they have to go back to what's called Coleman, Alabama, to be able to buy booze, to be able to get to a Publix to get good meat or cheese or whatever. And a lot of us don't go that deep and think about those things. So literally my ads, I show the views and that's it. I mean, I'm selling all the other ancillary components to mom and dad that are going to book to come to that market. And I sell my dock in the water and the kayaks and those amenities more than I do even the video games and the 3 living areas and the mega stocked kitchen. That's all important, but it's not as important because I figured out what those objections are. Does that make sense? So if you've never been in sales, you need to identify the sales objections of why somebody would not buy your property. So when somebody decides not to book with you, when they've started dialogue and they've asked questions, don't just tell them to F off when you're done. I know you wouldn't do that, but don't get pissed that they didn't book your property. Continue to engage with them and say, hey, did you find another property? Yeah, we did. Sorry, we'll consider yours next time. Hey, could you do me a quick favor? Can you tell me why you did not select my property so I could improve? Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. Not very many will respond to that. But like the 20% that do, you get absolutely gold nuggets that will improve your property, improve your hosting, and most importantly, better your marketing. Because sometimes it happens to me. Oh shit, I've got that, but I didn't tell them about that. Or I could position that a little bit differently to where maybe I could change their thought process. Because I'm just going to give you a pro tip. The marketing is all about psychology. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with benefits it's not about the amenities. It's not about the hot tub. It's not about the view. It's not about the open boat slip. It's about the emotion and the experience that comes behind that and how that psychologically transcends somebody to go from being a no to a yes. So just yesterday when I was down there with Chris Kenny, Chris is like, how far away is the nearest marina? I'm like, 30 minutes, 40 minutes by car, 5 minutes by water. He's like, you don't have a boat launch? I'm like, you can't launch it here. I said, there's one right around the street. He's like, what do you mean? And I totally forgot that literally one street over, we have a launch that's locked and just homeowners can use it that I can let my guests use. And it was not in my listing. And I've never marketed that. And this is a very long lake. So people have to drive forever to be able to get to a marina. So now that damn thing, we went and we shot video. Where it literally took photos. That's going to be in the first 5 images. And that will be a big part. I'm moving that up front and center because I've totally missed that. And that is a huge amenity for people that are bringing boats.
Right. Okay. Last question, I guess, parting advice, in terms of going back. So back it up a little bit. What I've gathered is it sounds like you need like 2, maybe even 3 avenues to approach in terms of looking for a new market for marketing, right? Like how many different things do you need to look for that you can market in a particular market?
I won't invest into a market or an individual property unless I have at least 1 mega, like a beach, right? But when you can get something else behind that, and that's the thing about like the Smokies and Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, right? So you've got the Smokies, that's number 1. Just like hiking and just throw hiking and whitewater rafting and all that type of stuff into one. But then you got the downtown, like all the entertainment, like all the mini golfs, all the whiskey tastings, all the entertainment that's there. That's 2. Then you got Dollywood. That's a whole nother form of entertainment with the amusement parks. I look at those 3 things, and we haven't even talked about Ober yet. So Ober makes that 4, for skiing for at least 3 or 4, however long their ski season is there, 3, 4, 5 months out of the year. So I'm looking at least typically 1 mega and then something that's going to be a little bit softer. So I'll just give you another example about Gulf Shores that people don't, know. I mean, it's really the beach. But what a lot of people, and I would call this a traffic driver, and it starts officially in March, is the airport, right? But every investor that I've talked to that's invested down there in the last 2 years knew nothing about the airport until I told them about the airport. And finding out about that airport and doing some research and seeing what happened to 30A and Rosemary Beach, when Panama City Beach started getting Southwest flights, that's when that whole market blew up. That's why I picked up my $2 million in Fort Morgan, Alabama, 30 minutes from the airport, and plunked it down in West Beach, which is literally 10 minutes from the airport. So I wanted to be closer in proximity to the airport. Very long-term play, right? I started that literally in 2020, as COVID was just getting started because of the airport, not something I'm going to get any immediate return. So I think one traffic driver is not good enough, in my opinion. You have to have more than one. You have to have at least two. And case in point is beachfront properties in Fort Morgan, Alabama are struggling right now. And because all we have is the beach. We don't have shopping. We don't have restaurants. We don't have any of that type of stuff. Even if you have a pool or a hot tub, they're struggling right now, right? It takes 25 minutes to get back to the mini golfs and the bumper boats and all that, and the hangout and all that type of stuff. So there's not enough traffic driver out there right now. It's not going to impact you in peak season, but the mentality is what are you going to market? How are you going to draw people in the shoulder and the off seasons, right? So I think you have to have at least two traffic drivers. And just kind of going back to Banner Elk, I've got two major ones just in between the two ski resorts, right? Then Grandfather Mountain's kind of another one, just because they do almost 2 million people a year that go to Grandfather Mountain. That's about 15 minutes away. So I look at proximity and I look at the traffic drivers. If you can't have a full-blown second traffic driver, then you need to have a really unique property that you can layer on the marketing components to, right? But it's always going to be hard, in my opinion, unless you have a boutique motel built in the caverns and caves someplace to where it's that unique. It's a hard draw to be able to bring enough people there over the course of the year. You might be able to get a group or two to come in, but you're not going to be able to consistently fill your calendar with that.
Interesting. Okay. So how do we learn more about this? Because, you kind of unpack some high-level things, but what's the best way to get more content from you about marketing approaches, strategies? You talked about Facebook ads. This is a lot of in-depth content that you could probably go on and on for hours, I'm sure, but how do we get more?
You can buildshorttermrentalwealth.com is our website. You can go to the Build Short, and probably the best resource is my free Facebook group. Build Short-Term Rental Wealth is the Facebook group. Have great content, great contributors into that. I think it's the best group that I've ever seen in our industry. It's not the biggest, but from the quality of content that's in that group. Kenny, really the big thing for me, honestly, is I think a lot of this requires in-person. I've got Facebook, courses and all that type of stuff like everybody else does, but the retention level is challenging. You're part of my STR super team. We have a boot camp coming up in Nashville, November 19th and 20th. Chris, what's that?
I'm just kidding. Wait, no, I said, wait, what? What's this boot? No.
Oh, it's November 19th and 20th. So here's what's different about this, and kind of just to elaborate a little bit. So there's only 4 sessions at this boot camp. And usually when you go to a conference, it's 45 minutes, new speaker, 45 minutes, new speaker. And it's just this high level stuff. And you can get a nugget or two, but these are going to be 4-hour session, huge deep dives, right? And the last day is really Chris, who works for me, who has probably deployed I've done just over $10 million in Facebook ads. He's probably done 4 or 5 of it. We're going to tell you, we're going to teach you all the things I talked about with marketing, and actually you're going to deploy while you're there. It's not just Facebook ads. We're going to talk about copywriting, the platforms that you should be using right now, the time wasters that don't drive traffic. So the 4-hour sessions, like Kenny's going to be there and he's doing a session. Him and I will be working together on, how to identify markets. And I'm talking deep stuff that we can't really go into on a podcast, but we need to have a screen. You need to have a workbook. You need to be prepared for that type of stuff, right? And it's something we've never done. This will be my 28th boot camp, Kenny. And one thing I will tell you, if you were interested in it, please go to buildstrwealth.com/bootcamp. I'm sure Kenny can put that in the show notes for me. Buildstrwealth.com/bootcamp. We've got about somewhere between 20 to 25 tickets left right now. It's just over a month away. We have sold out every single boot camp I've ever done. So it will sell out. If you want to come and change your life, literally I've got Ryan Bakey on the tax side, Jeff Hampton on the entity and asset protection side. Kenny is going to teach you the secrets and probably deliver some of the best markets to invest in at that time. I've got the bank whisperer, John Hodge. Don't sleep on John. Nobody's ever seen. Can I take a second? I want to talk about John because
Sure,
I
go
just
ahead.
sent an email out about this, and John Hodge. No, he's not a speaker. He's not an influencer. He doesn't do what I do in this industry. He's a gentleman that I've partnered with in a business called Riven Capital Group. We're investing $100 million into STRs into a syndication. And don't worry, we've got people raising the equity, so there will be no sales pitch. The reason that I wanted to partner with John, outside of him being just an astute investor and being an expert in construction, is he has the ability to convince bankers to give him what he wants. And just it's crazy. And it has to do with a lot of preparation on the front end. It has to do with the documentation and the package that he puts together. But it also has to do with the timing and how he positions where we're at in the market. So like the deals that he's negotiating for us on these like apartments and motels right now, and these properties for the fund are just incredible. Think about it right now. Would you kill for 6.25% prime interest rate right now? Everybody would. Well, I don't think I could get it, but John's got it. So when you look at this boot camp, Kenny, this will be the first time, the deepest we've ever gone, but we're going to cover everything from the entity setup to, to cost segregations. Right now is the time for tax. You can't wait until January or February to start thinking about tax. I mean, to have Ryan Bakey, Jeff Hampton, you, John, on this team, it's never been done before. And if you're considering coming, which every one of you should, I'm going to give you a personal guarantee. This has nothing to do with Kenny or anybody else. If you don't see 10 times the value in the first day, all you have to do is just come up to me or come up to Chris that works for me. Give him your workbook, give him your badge, and just say, you know what? It's not for me. And I will personally give you a 100% refund on the spot. I've offered that at every single boot camp I've ever ran. I've never, ever had somebody take me up on it because of the value that's created. It's gonna be life-changing for quite a few people that are gonna be there, Kenny, and I'm excited to have you as a part of it.
Yeah, I think one thing that's different about this boot camp that we're going to be a part of is all the speakers. It's not just
Educators.
Educators. There we go. Speakers, educators. It's better. It truly is education, because we're not just showing up and doing our spill and then ending. It's going to tie into each other. We're actually getting together before the boot camp.
You bring up a great point. So Kenny, Jeff Hampton from STR Law Guys, Ryan Bakey, Learn Like a CPA, John Hodge, Chris, myself, we're all hunkering down in downtown Nashville, and for 2 days to make sure that everything is cohesive together. Because as Kenny talked about, like, what's my process to identify a new market? It's the same thing. This is most of us get it wrong before we even identify our market or before we close on the property. And that's on the legal side, right? And that's why we need Jeff Hampton. Most of us most of us don't really invest enough in our self-education from a tax standpoint. So we're going to go through this whole progression, right? And it really starts with, okay, let's start with Kenny. Here's the best markets to invest in today. Here's how you identify. Here's how you blah, blah, blah. Right? Then we need to create our entities as we're getting under contract. Then you need John Hodge. Here's the package. Here's how you negotiate with a seller as well as the banker, right? Then you're getting this property. Why are you buying it? Let's take advantage of the taxes with Ryan, how you set everything up. And that's so key to have Jeff and Ryan together, Kenny, because a lot of people are making mistakes because they're getting bad advice on how to set up their entities from a tax perspective, right? So liabilities here, taxes here, now they're coming together. Right. So everything that they talk about, and no, there's never been anybody to do that. So it's soup to nuts. It's everything. Chris and I are going to teach you how to market the shit out of your property so you are not slow right now. Right. How you can maximize your ADR, how you can get more bookings, and why I never have to discount pricing. Even my lake property that's underperforming compared to the last 2 years right now, it's still outperforming 2018 and 19. Now I'm going to ramp it up to get back to 2021 numbers by deploying new content. I'm going to teach you how to do Facebook ads. I'm going to teach you how to do social media. You're going to get it all in 2 days for less than $1,000.
Yeah. I just want to emphasize that like this is the first event where Bill mentioned it. We're hunkering down. And it's important that we're going a month before we're even doing this boot camp to talk about the content. In fact, I even sent in the content the options that can teach and educate people on beforehand. I've gotten text messages from some of the guys. Oh, this would be good to talk on, or you should focus more on this. And then we're going to get together and talk about it and how's it going to flow all together. And
I wouldn't even say just talk about it. We're going to structure it into curriculum.
There you go.
Right?
We're like, yeah.
When I corrected Kenny earlier when he referred to people as speakers, I speak, Kenny speaks. This is teaching, completely different than speaking. It will be synergized together. I grew up in a family of educators. There's a difference between a teacher that knows what they're doing and one that has truly invested their summer to build out curriculum for kids through the entire year. We are going to deliver curriculum for you that you're going to be able to hold on to for the next 25 years of your life. Most importantly, you're going to execute. And here's a sneak peek that I'll tell you, the ones that have signed up know this, but you're going to start executing before you even get here, because we are going to have a group educational session about 2 weeks prior to the boot camp. You're going to have a workbook and you will be prepared before you even walk in the door. That's how deep this is going to be. This is going to be like 2 days of going back to college. And you're going to get a master's degree in 2 days.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to not only share my content, but hear, and talk to the other, educators and hear their stuff, because I'm still learning from them too. It's when I talk to Jeff scares me with all this, the asset protection. It makes you realize like,
you're right about that.
Really protected, and just knowing that, I mean, that's worth it, the admission alone. But then you have Ryan and then John. I mean, I even called John sometimes. I had a deal that was presented to me. It was for a long-term rental. And, I talked to John. I said, John, what do you think of this? How should I present this to the seller and negotiate with him? And we all are very specialized in what we do. And you put that together and it really is a super team. So anyway, if I'll just say this, if you're really serious about finding, and getting protected and the tax planning and making the deals and the marketing and stuff, and you're ready to hit the ground running, this is the opportunity to do that. I think this is a great time too. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. So I want to wrap everything up. So Bill, thank you so much for being on this and doing this with us. I think it's definitely, for me personally, and looking for new properties, it's definitely helped me realize that there's got to be, we do have to focus on traffic drivers, that there is this transition between the COVID period and, what the period is now. I don't know what we call it. Post-COVID. There we go. Post-COVID. And why it's important to look at markets that might be more traditional, that have 1, 2, 3, 4 traffic drivers that are important for our marketing. So I those were kind of the nuggets I took away. For those of you who are watching this, I'd love to hear in the comments, what particular nuggets did you learn that you really liked? I love seeing what stood out to them, because it's unique for each person. So with that being said, thank you so much, Bill, for being on. And thank you everybody for listening. And I hope to see you, if you're not at the boot camp, sometime in the future.
Thank you.